All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about a story of unbelievable vision, a scientific journey that took decades, with a goal so big it honestly sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. This is all about India's incredible quest for unlimited energy. So to really get this, we've got to start with a question that, sounds like it completely breaks the laws of physics. How in the world do you create more fuel than you actually burn? I mean, it sounds impossible, right? Like some kind of magic trick. But here's the thing, it's not magic. It's just a masterpiece of nuclear science. And the answer to that mind-bending puzzle? It all comes down to this brilliant long-term plan, a plan that was laid out decades ago by a true visionary, the nuclear scientist Dr. Homi J. Bhabha. He basically created this one-of-a-kind three-stage roadmap, all designed to steer India towards total energy independence. So this roadmap, it's pretty straightforward, broken down into three main stages. You've got the foundation, then you move to the multiplier. And trust me, this is the really critical part. And it all ends with the future, which is the ultimate goal. Each step builds on the one before it. So let's kick things off at the very beginning with stage one. Okay, so stage one, the starting point. This is where the whole thing gets going, and it starts with a process you've probably heard of before, nuclear fission. The idea behind this first stage is actually pretty simple. You take a uranium atom and you split it. Boom, that's fission. When it splits, it lets off a ton of heat. That heat creates steam, the steam turns the turbine, and there you go, electricity. This is pretty much how most nuclear power plants around the world work.
But, and this is a big but for this plan, there are some really key details here. Stage one runs on natural uranium. And, well, India has to import most of it. So right at the start, you're still depending on other countries. But here's the kicker. While it's making electricity, it's also creating a super important byproduct, plutonium. And that plutonium, that's the key that's going to unlock the whole next stage.
Okay, now we're getting to the really cool part. Stage two, the fuel multiplier. And listen, this isn't just the next step in the process. This is the breakthrough. This is the moment that changes the entire game. So the tech here is called a fast breeder reactor. What it does is it takes all that plutonium we got from stage one and uses it as fuel. But here's where the genius comes in. The reactor core is wrapped in what they call a blanket of uranium. And as this thing runs, it's not just making power, it's actually turning that uranium blanket into even more plutonium.
Yeah, let me say that again, because this is literally the whole point. In this stage, the reactor creates more fuel than it uses. You heard me right. You end up with more fuel than you put in to begin with. It's incredible. Let's put some numbers on that so you can see what I mean. For every single kilogram of fuel you put into this fast breeder reactor, you get about 1.2 kilograms of usable fuel back out. And it's doing this while generating electricity. It's basically a fuel factory and a power plant all rolled into one.
So you see the massive difference, right? Stage one uses up fuel and depends on imports. Stage two multiplies fuel and paves the way for total self-sufficiency. That byproduct from stage one was just a stepping stone, but the byproduct from stage two, it's energy and a growing stockpile of fuel for the future. And all of this leads us to the end game, stage three, the final step. This is where that decades-long vision really pays off. It's all about unlocking a huge energy resource that India happens to have tons of. Okay, so remember that uranium blanket we talked about in the breeder reactor? Well, for stage three, you swap that out. You replace it with something called thorium. And this is the final masterstroke of the entire plan. So why thorium? What's the big deal? Well, it turns out India has some of the biggest thorium reserves on the entire planet. And when you use thorium in these advanced reactors, it actually converts into a type of uranium that you can use for fuel. What you get is a totally self-sustaining cycle, all powered by a resource you have right at home. The need to import uranium? Poof, gone, completely eliminated. So let's just zoom out and put this all together. You see, this was never just about building a new kind of power plant. The real goal from day one was complete and total energy independence. So the entire logic of this thing really boils down to this. Step one, you start with imported uranium to create that first little spark of plutonium. Step two, you take that plutonium and use it in a breeder reactor to multiply your fuel supply, like exponentially. And then finally, step three, you use that amazing breeder technology to turn your own huge thorium reserves into a practically limitless supply of fuel. The source material we're looking at puts it perfectly.
It says, if this breeder technology did not exist, we would never be able to reach the third stage. And that's the bottom line. Stage 2 isn't just another step. It's the critical bridge that makes this whole dream of energy independence even possible. And that really leaves us with one final fascinating thing to think about. Once a country with over 1 billion people actually achieves this kind of energy security, this kind of independence, what new futures suddenly become possible? I mean, what new heights can be reached? Now, that is something that's definitely worth watching.